Dr. Umar is one of the most requested, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most requested speakers in the world, and that is no exaggeration, and has been invited to speak in every continent except Australia. He is a universal household name when it comes to politics, education, mental health, and Pan-Afrikanism. He is a regularly invited guest to college campuses across the country, that's across America, where he speaks on both scholarly topics and current events. Dr. Umar is currently renovating his new school, the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG, International Leadership Academy for Boys, America's first academy for black boys, founded upon the principles of revolutionary Pan-Afrikanism and international politics. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the brief background of the person I am hosting today. Dr. WILMINGTON, it's a privilege to have you here today, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me with you.
You have such a rich background there that many people, many Africans in particular, are yet to discover. But first of all, let me say it's a great pleasure having you here. Thanks for accepting the invitation to come on ABC. For your information, ABC is a Pan-African television that broadcasts to all of Africa 24/7 by way of satellite. But let me get back a little bit to your background. You have done so much within, it appears, a very short span of time, considering that I guess you are still in your mid-50s. Am I wrong?
40s.
That is correct?
Mid-40s. 40s, mid-40s.
Oh, 40, mid-40s. Okay, imagine that. And I think listening to you on one of the shows, you have about 6 degrees. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much again for joining me today. We are going to carry out this conversation in different dimensions. We're going to be talking about African and African politics, African development, and we come back to the USA and talk about black issues and racial issues in the USA. But many of us Africans will say it is not the way, it is not a psychological problem per se, it is the type of leadership, the kind of leadership which you know, having witnessed some of it, which you know exists in Africa. For example, how can I, if I were the president of any nation in Africa, allow Chinese businesses to come into my country and they can boldly put a sign, no Africans accepted in this shop, and some of them don't pay taxes, but the system, the governments allow them to operate just freely? Don't you think the problem with this is the African leadership, the African governments?
That is an excellent question, and I have a few points to that issue. Number one, Africa could have been liberated in these 60 years since independence came to many of the sub-Saharan nations. It could have been liberated. The problem is the type of leader that the people are constantly putting in office. Most African heads of state spend their time in office preparing for life after office. I want to say that again. Most African heads of state spend their time in office preparing for life after office. To be more specifically, the reason why they will let European countries come in and exploit the resources, the reason why they will accept these financially exploitative loans from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the reason why they will accept these lines of credit from China is because they are too lazy. They are too politically lazy, they are too economically lazy, and they are too socially lazy to go through the hard work that is necessary in order to build Africa back up from the ground. See, it is easy to take a loan. and build some infrastructure from a loan from America or France or Britain or China. And the reason why it's so easy and the reason why so many African leaders would rather accept the loan than build up the country from within is because they will not have to suffer the responsibility of paying back the interest or the debt that accrues from that loan, because they will be out of office by the time it's time to start paying on that loan. Let me give you an example. You have President number one. He takes the loans from America, the World Bank, the IMF. He takes the lines of credit from China. He builds a new school. He builds a new hospital. He improves the airport. He starts some jobs and businesses. He builds some homes. He will be championed by his people who are politically uneducated in many cases. And most Africans in the world are politically uneducated, by the way. That's not unique to the continent. African Americans are politically uneducated. Let me be clear. That is a global phenomenon for all of our people. But because he created things that are pleasing to the eye, he will be considered a great president. Now, he leaves office. The new president comes in. The new president says, we're not going to take out any more loans from America, from France, from Britain, from China. We have raw natural resources. We have industries of our own. And although it will be difficult for China, difficult for Ghana, difficult for the Cameroon, difficult for Sudan, difficult for the Gambia, difficult for Zimbabwe, we're going to use what we have to liberate ourselves, reduce this debt so we can someday be free. In other words, you're not going to have it as comfortable as you had it under the last president. Because although you had a comfortable life under the last president, he led this country into debt. And so ironically, the president that hurt the people will be a hero, and the president that tried to save the people will be considered an enemy. We can do this. The world cannot stop the rush of 2 billion Africans at the same time, totally united, without any tribal schisms or petty differences. Nothing can stop the African except the African himself.
We can do it, as you say, but one would like to ask, how are you, with such passion that we see in you for this, how are you doing this? Are you building some groups, some coalitions with which to achieve some of these things, or you just being vocal, hoping that somebody picks up the ideas and run with them?
Absolutely not. I'm a Pan-Afrikanist and a Garveyite, and I say that with pride. We believe in action. Our nationalism is an action-based nationalism. Right now, I'm in the process of renovating 2 beautiful schools in Wilmington, Delaware, which will be the first of several Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey academies, where we will teach African leadership. We will teach international relations, international affairs, global economics. We are training Black boys to be the Black African leaders that we need around the world. We will teach them white supremacy. They will learn how to speak African languages. They will understand military science. They will know why and how the European and Chinese came to control so much of the African continent. Again, as I said earlier, education and economics is the right foot and left foot of African liberation. And as a psychologist and an educator, it is my obligation to help reconstruct the African mind. Because if you do not have a psychological revolution, there will never be a military revolution. If you do not have a psychological revolution, there will never be a political revolution. If you do not have a psychological revolution, there will never be an educational one, a social one, a dietary one, a family one. Change the African mind first, or you change nothing else. You and I both know that there have been scores of African leaders who came into power, who took over from the European and became just like the European on top of their own people. So changing out white power for Black power doesn't liberate African people unless the Black power has an African consciousness. I'm beginning with the schools, but then we need the hospitals, we need the banks, we need the military systems, we need the farms. We need a global African movement that is based on independent institutions. Because only if you control the institution can you change the behavior.